There's a battle going on to control the narrative. Gotta wonder who's gonna come out on top. Well, I think I know. Hang in there and I'll be right back. Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and I've got several different things for you, but they all have a basic idea of controlling the narrative. What's going on out there? What's really the truth? And that's what we're going to look into. So first of all, this is a very interesting little piece here with Lou Dobbs. I'm going to play it for you. It's only a minute 24, so here you go.
New developments in the case against the politically corrupt Obama-era FBI and Justice Department officials who conspired to set up and to frame former National Security Advisor General Michael Flynn. Sources familiar with the investigation tell Fox News that U.S. Attorney John Durham has reviewed the recently released documents from the Flynn case, and that Durham now believes the corrupt actions laid out in those documents are sufficient to bring charges against members of the FBI and the Department of Justice who carried out criminal acts against General Flynn. Durham is said to be speaking regularly with Attorney General Bill Barr and is building what some sources call a serious case against those FBI and DOJ officials. Durham is expected to wrap up his investigation by the end of this summer. President Trump has been briefed on the case, we're told, and had this to say about the radical Dems and the deep state's actions.
Ultimately, they were looking to destroy the presidency. They were looking to destroy a duly elected president who beat the hell out of a horrible candidate called Crooked Hillary.
So, yeah, it sounds like it's really heating up there with Durham. And what has been put out already does appear to be sufficient evidence to make a criminal case against them. So I think, Durham is really getting a lot of pieces to the puzzle put together. I know it's very frustrating waiting for it, folks, but think of who all it has to include in this. There are going to be people that there's obviously going to be some resistance to in the population. So all of these cases have to be built so meticulously so there are no loopholes, no way to get off, because that's what they're really good at. So they need to make sure that nobody gets away from this. Nobody escapes this justice. So that's what we want. Remember, we want justice, and that will entail cleaning up our government. So it's going to be an interesting task, and it's really very difficult to do when you think about it, because it can be, thought of as a political hit job, and that's what they're trying to avoid. They're trying to make sure the American people can see for themselves the corruption. And I think a lot of this lockdown thing has been to expose them, because look what we're dealing with now. These people are, getting worse and showing themselves. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. But let me show you this tweet. This is from May 17th, 2019. So almost a year ago, not quite yet, but he said, "My campaign for president was conclusively spied on. Nothing like this has ever happened in American politics. A really bad situation. Treason means long jail sentences, and this was treason." So I wanted to point that out to you, because even back then, he's been saying it all along, because he knew what had happened. And what they did to Flynn, he's known. Okay? I know that he's making it seem like he's just finding out what they did to Flynn, but I think we all probably think that he knew from the beginning that this is part of the plan, and it was something that he was aware of. So I just thought I'd bring that up to you, because it's been said, and I remember when this tweet came out, that the mainstream media went crazy over it, and they were just jumping all over him for it. But he was right. He was right. And speaking of, Trump being right, this whole thing with China, I think we need to examine that a little closer. Now, this website right here, because you know me, I'm a teacher. I like to make sure that you have tools to be able to do your own research, because that's really what this whole movement is about. Learning to think for yourselves and be able to use different tools to find the information you need. And one of the tools, I think, is this right here. This is the Trump Twitter archive. You can go in here and you can search. There's been 47,932 tweets. That's a lot of them, isn't it? But you can search for a certain term. You can search for certain dates. And you can even search by the different devices here, I guess. So anyway, I just thought it was a really good one that you could go through. But the researchers did, so at least one of the researchers, and they put in the term China back in 2011. And even back in 2011, President Trump, when he was just Donald Trump at that time, he was talking about China a lot. And you can go through these tweets and you can see all the things he was saying about China at the time. America's trade deficit with China is one of our greatest national security threats. Time for fair trade. We must produce our own products. I mean, he was right. He was right back then. Why are we giving China foreign aid? Couldn't the super committee have agreed to at least cut that outlay? Time to get tough. China's economy is now projected to overtake the U.S. as the world's largest economy by 2027. Not anymore. Yep. So just so much here. If you go through them, you can see he has been strong on China and he's been working on this and saying this ever since 2011. I mean, long time ago. And I think that's probably when he first started tweeting back then. I don't know exactly when it was, but anyway, so I thought I'd share that with you, and you can see all the links down below, remember, in the description. Here's another one that's a little bit of a blast from the past, too, because this is from 2013. And this was, at the time, the complete list of Barack Obama's scandals, misdeeds, crimes, and blunders. Well, there's more to add to that now, but I just thought you'd be interested to see it, because there's a whole big bunch of them. Let's not forget some of these things. So I just want to make sure that you were aware of this, and like, for instance, this one, in both the 2008 and the 2012 presidential elections, the Obama campaign purposely disabled the credit card verification system for its website donations, allowing anyone from any foreign country to donate with no limit and no proof of identity. In both elections, it was demonstrated that people overseas and people with obviously false identities were able to donate to Obama campaign in direct violation of several laws. To this day, it is not known what percentage of Obama's campaign funds were illegally obtained, since there is no documentation. I'm telling you, folks, you need to go through this list because it will show you some things you may not have caught. And there was a lot we need to remember, like Fast and Furious. Let's not forget what went on. There were a lot of things, but we had a complicit press and they wouldn't point anything out. They didn't want to investigate anything. I was on Twitter today and there was a liberal who had made a comment. I responded to him about the whole Joe Biden thing. And they were saying, well, if you want to investigate, you need to investigate Trump. I said, I already have. Because, you see, I don't vote for people that I haven't checked into first. Have you spent 4 years investigating Joe Biden? Maybe you should. I mean, they just don't want to see that. And if they would start looking at stuff like this, they'd realize that there were major red flags with Obama. And I saw them, but a lot of people didn't. So, anyway, I'll leave a link to that down below. And speaking of Obamas, guess what? The committee to draft Michelle Obama. If you go down here, I think they put their bid in 4/27. That's when they first officially filed. So there is a movement to try to get her to run, but let's hope that's not it. But I really think at this point it's going to be Hillary. She's starting to make more comments on Twitter all of a sudden. Who knows if it's actually her, but her Twitter account is doing that. So I think probably that's who they're wanting to put in, but we'll see. It's not going to be Joe. I'm telling you, Joe's going to be in big trouble because this is going to have to come out about Tara Reade. And She mentioned, the database that they have of all these senators and members of Congress who have had to pay off people for these sexual harassment suits. Yeah, I'm sure there's some documentation there. Let's find it. Anyway, this is the guy that got booted, and you know that. And this is a little interview with him, or a little bit of it. And he does, talk about the whole thing. So I just thought I'd leave that for you. You can watch that on your own. And then if you go down a little way, there was this statement on physician misinformation. And it was from the American College of Emergency Physicians and the American Academy of Emergency Medicine emphatically condemn the recent opinions that he released, these two guys. And if you haven't seen that video, you do need to watch it. I'll try to remember to put the link in down below. It's on BitChute. It's not here. So I will try to remember that. But they said they were reckless and untested musings. But they were all based on data. And they were very careful to make sure that what they were saying was data driven. And so I really, they're getting in trouble for it. But I'm glad that they did, because it's very important for what they said. And that probably is why YouTube decided to take it down. And then, but if you go down here to this, or if you maybe follow him, this is the, what is it? The Raging Patriot, I think it is, Joey Saladino. And this video right here is about an hour-long video where he interviewed the guy. So I thought they covered a lot of things. It was really good. So I'll leave the link to that video down below too. It's still up as of now. I don't know if it'll last, but it is for now. And Candace Owens, you probably know her. Things that were considered conspiracy theories a month ago that are now verified facts. 1, people that were never tested are added to the coronavirus death toll. 2, hospitals are paid more for COVID-19 deaths. 3, the virus is nowhere near as deadly as experts predicted. Okay, now I had some questions at first about whether hospitals were getting paid more for the COVID-19 deaths, but I found out that yes, they did actually get more money that way. Plus, you have to understand that if a state can show that they have more of a problem with the COVID deaths, then that's going to up the amount of federal money they get. So there's an incentive in the states to have that appear on more death certificates than is actual. And then shortly after she tweeted that, she tweeted something else, and Candace Owens just had her posting privileges suspended after telling Michigan residents that they should go back to work. So this is what happens when Twitter doesn't agree with you. They should unsuspend her immediately. And so that brought a lot of interesting comments. I was really surprised that there were several that were very negative, like this one. She said they need to get back to work. People need to get back to work. So this was really kind of interesting to read the comments on, because they did kind of go back and forth. But anyway, so that's another thing that's going on. She got booted, and then James Woods, remember I talked about him in a previous video, somebody hacked his account and posted 2 different tweets, and he hasn't posted since then. So the tweets have been removed, but he hasn't posted anything. So I don't know what's going on there either. They just don't like us. But Project Veritas is still on here, and they've been doing a little bit of undercover stuff, and here they have this guy, Michael Lanza, who is a funeral director, Colonial Funeral Home, and that's in Queens, New York, and this was on 4/22. So listen to this.
To be honest with you, all of the death certificates, they're writing COVID on all of the death certificates, whether they had a positive test, whether they didn't. So I think, again, this is my personal opinion. I think, like the mayor in our city, they're looking for federal funding, and the more they put COVID on a death certificate, the more they can ask for federal funds. So I think it's political. So I'm going to turn around and say, not everybody that we have here that has COVID on a death certificate died of COVID. COVID. Can I prove that? No, but that is my suspicion.
So you think that they're just putting it on everyone who's dying?
They're putting it on everybody's death certificate to make life easier for them, because, like, the causes of death get proved right away. If you write COVID, I mean, listen, they're just pushing things out because they're overwhelmed, and it's just easier to write COVID on everything. That's my opinion.
So this isn't, like, we're not the first case of this happening?
Oh, absolutely not.
How often do you think this has happened?
Quite a lot. Quite a lot.
So you've seen, like...
I couldn't give you a number, but quite a lot.
So, yeah, that's interesting, right? And it's not like we haven't suspected this, because we've been keeping an eye on the numbers. And this is the CDC website right here. This is it. And they say here that as of May 2nd, there were 64,283 deaths. Okay, as of May 2nd. Well, very interestingly, though, if you go to their actual table involving coronavirus deaths, it's weird because, and I realize this only goes to 425, so there would be between 426 and 52 that would not be registered on here yet. But look at these numbers. Now, I'm not totally sure I understand all of this because here they have the total deaths that were from just coronavirus. And this code right here is the code that the doctors would put on it. So then deaths from all causes, and surely because if you add all these numbers up, it's more, this is much more than that. So I'm assuming this is like accidents and other things that happen to people. So I think that's what the whole thing is. And then the percent of expected deaths, they expected more, they had 3% less than they expected, I guess. Then they get into the pneumonia deaths, and then they have deaths with pneumonia and COVID. And then they have influenza, and I got to scroll down for this. Okay, then they have influenza deaths, and then the very last column is deaths with pneumonia, influenza, or COVID-19. Now, there's little tiny numbers here that are footnotes. And if you go down to the footnotes, I'm going to scroll that back. If you go down to the footnotes, you'll see some of the information here. And it says, these are deaths with confirmed or presumed coronavirus. So this is not just confirmed. These are presumed. And they did the same thing down here when they were talking about the pneumonia or influenza deaths. Death counts include deaths with pneumonia or COVID, also listed as a cause of death. And then the last column, deaths with confirmed or presumed COVID-19, pneumonia, or influenza. And then there's different codes that they use on that. So it just seems to me like the numbers don't really add up, right? I don't know. See, in the COVID, it says this is supposed to be for the entire United States, 37,000. Well, I just heard the other day, I thought it was yesterday or maybe even earlier today, that it was like 50 or 60,000. Well, they're also including these over here. And so it's messy. It's very messy. And so the people who have only had COVID and not flu or pneumonia, these are the numbers for them. They're very small numbers, really. I mean, relatively speaking, they're very small for our entire United States. Remember, this column over here is the total number of deaths for the same time period. Well, look at this. You know, we had 66,000 deaths this week right here. We had 64,000 here. So, yes, these numbers go up, but are they out of line? I don't think so. So look through this, and see for yourself what you think with it. What exactly are they doing with these numbers? And the really weird thing is, if you recall, okay, this is data as of May 1st. but 37,308, right? It just looks a little odd to me, in my opinion. And speaking of oddities, how about this one? Listen to this.
Do we have enough infrastructure to contact trace the way that we need to?
I think that's why the criteria that you can see the gates that are that the federal government has recommended are.
Do we have enough infrastructure to contact trace the way that we need to?
I think that's why the criteria that you can see the gates that are that the federal government has recommended.
Oops. She said a little more than she was supposed to, didn't she? So I'll leave the link to this down below. I think she, did stutter on that. She did say Gates. So I think that was a big oopsie there. And then this one, it's like crazy. Oh, the NYPD swarms parks because I don't know about where you live, but I'm recording this on Saturday, and it was a glorious day. I mean, we had sun, it was warm, it was in the 70s. Oh, and we've been cooped up for a long time. So people were out like crazy around here. I mean, just driving around town, there were tons of people. I went to past where the Lowe's store is, and the Lowe's store had a big bunch of people in the parking lot. I mean, the parking lot was kind of full, and they're only allowing 50 people in the store. And I did go to the grocery store, and they have closed one exit that is only exit only, and then the other one they made for an entrance. So you used to be able to go in either door, and now you can only go in the one door and out the other door. And they have little arrows down the aisles, so they're one-way aisles. And they had a lady standing there as I came in, and she was like, we were kind of joking about it because I said, have you actually stopped anybody from coming in the store? And she goes, no, we never come up to the amount we're supposed to. We don't even get close. So it was just kind of interesting. And she said, no, we just do it so corporate, is satisfied. And they're just jumping through hoops just because they have to. But it was just weird. And they all had to wear masks. And you could see several of them were had their masks down under their nose. It's like, it's really defeating the purpose. But it didn't bother. I didn't wear a mask. So they probably were mad at me. I think I may have been supposed to wear it going in there. But I didn't, and nobody called me on it. I did get a couple of glares from some elderly people, but anyway. But yeah, you need to look at this. This is just like, as temps climbed into the 70s, more than 1,000 NYPD officers made their presence known. 1,000! Across the 5 boroughs as they enforce state social distancing mandates requiring masks and at least 6 feet of space between people to contain the spread of the killer bug. So, and the people were saying, it's just crazy that they were doing this. It's like something out of 1984. What is this, a military state now? Yes, welcome to the world that your people that you voted in have created. This is it right here. This is the world. And I like down here, this one said, I started to really pay attention and I saw dozens of police vans everywhere, he said. It's an overwhelming feeling. I understand they are keeping us safe. Are they really? But do we really want to become China, where they're recording you when you come out of your building? That's where we're headed. And you got to kind of wonder this. Has anyone entertained the notion that maybe, just maybe, these Democrat governors and mayors have no intention of restoring our civil liberties? Yep, I have. I've thought about that. It's like, how do we get this back? Anyway. And then I wanted to let you know what our president is doing, because he has issued an executive order to protect our power grid from attack. And this is an article about it, of course. President Trump on Friday issued an executive order declaring a national emergency over threats to the U.S. power system, taking steps to defend the grid against cyber attacks and foreign interference. And so here's the actual executive order if you want to read it. It's kind of long, actually, and it does set up I think it says back here that the executive order bans the use of equipment for the power grid that was manufactured by a company under the control of a foreign adversary, or the buying of any equipment that poses a national security threat. So in other words, we're getting rid of all the stuff that was built by countries that don't like us and would probably make them either inferior or maybe put some spyware in them just to take us down when they want to. So that's a good thing right there. And additional steps are required to protect the security, integrity, and reliability of bulk power system electric equipment in the United States. Trump wrote, "In light of these findings, I hereby declare a national emergency with respect to the threat to the United States bulk power system." So I thought that was really good. And, this is something that we needed to do because that's an important part of things. Can you imagine? Take the situation we have now and add to it the power grid going down. I mean, talk about a disruption. Not only would our lives be disrupted by all this stay-at-home stuff, but then you've got added on to that this additional no power. Some of you would probably never speak to your family again if you had to be with them all this time with no power. And, when you don't have power, you lose food stuff. You have transportation that would not be able to move the things. And, you don't have refrigeration or anything like that. When you're talking about that on a big scale, a nationwide scale, it would be just tremendous. And, the people that are behind all this, they're not above doing this kind of garbage. So I think it's very good that Trump has taken this step, and he created some kind of thing down here. The order establishes the Secretary of Energy as the official tasked with identifying equipment currently in use in the bulk power system that poses a risk and working to take out and replace that equipment. The Secretary is also in charge of creating a list of pre-qualified vendors that are deemed safe to work with. And the Department of Energy has stepped up its focus on protecting the grid from attacks in recent years. Former Energy Secretary Rick Perry established the Office of Cybersecurity, Energy Security, and Emergency Response in 2018 to help prepare and respond to threats. So they have that. That's this right here. So lots going on with that. And again, I'll put the link to the executive order down there too. And then this is just a thread that you may want to read if you happen to follow the 17th letter of the alphabet, because it's really nice to see. And you've got all these different people who are just posting their flag, and they're just, this is them. They're showing their patriotism. So I thought it would be interesting to leave this for you. You might want to go through it and see just what all there is here, because it's people from not just one or two places, but they're from all over. And, it's great. A lot of them from the U.S., of course, but there's people from other countries, too. And then the last thing I want to leave you with, in case you didn't get a chance to see it, this came out on May 1st, and Dan Bongino did an interview with President Trump. And that's the first part of it. And then he goes into the second part, and he talks more about Mike Flynn and that whole situation. And the thing about when he speaks of what was going on in the FBI, he used to be law enforcement, so he does understand, he was in the Secret Service. He understands that perspective of it. So he knows what it's like from the inside in some ways. When they're talking about the 302s and they're talking about the different paperwork that had to be done, he knows the process. And that the process is, when you do an interview like that, you write it down shortly thereafter, because you've got to get it in the system. And, he can look at the procedures that were followed and see how they did not line up to what they should have been. It was definitely not business as usual with the FBI when it came to Flynn. So Anyway, he brings out some really good things on the second half of it. The whole thing is an hour and a half long, but it was really good listening to President Trump. I always appreciate listening to President Trump on like Fox and Friends or on this or Hannity, because he's much more relaxed. He's not on his guard with like he has to be for the press, having them yip at him all the time and ask stupid questions and gotcha questions. He doesn't have to be quite as much on guard. And usually, he's much more forthcoming with his information. And that's something that I've appreciated about him in his entire presidency. He's been much more accessible. I don't recall Obama ever being this accessible. I mean, every time he walks out to the Marine One, he always is answering questions from him. And, he did all those daily briefings for a while, and I just think he does a really good job in connecting in with the people. So he's going to be doing a town hall. You should see this Sunday sometime. And I think Sunday night at 7 Eastern, he's going to be doing a town hall on Fox. So something to look forward to and tune in for. Okay, that's what I've got for you on this one. I want to thank you for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.